Oh, well, I guess to give a little background, I grew up on the Chronicles of Narnia, and I know that later in life I found out that C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were good friends, and so that definitely primed me for the love of Tolkien. And I remember when I was first introduced to the Fellowship of the Ring, the movies, which is the format that I first encountered Tolkien. Um, it was through a cousin of mine in my family, and it was on VHS. um, and I watched that movie, and I was just so enthralled and just mesmerized by the story, by the scope, by the epic nature of the movie itself, the heroism, the danger, the good versus evil, which I would credit the Chronicles of Narnia for bringing me into that um, idea of what it is, but then I getting expanded on in the Fellowship of the Ring. It totally blew my mind as a child. I think I was even a preteen at that point, and I don't know. I totally delved into the story. So that definitely the Fellowship of the Ring, the movie itself, was my first medium of knowing Tolkien. Um, and then of course, I watched the Two Towers later, and I think I saw that in theater. Not of course on opening night yet, but I remember watching the Two Towers, and then my parents and my family, we all loved the movie so much that we decided to do the midnight showing premiere of The Return of the King. And they even took me out of school for the next day to be able to see it. And it was just, that opened my eyes to the world of Tolkien. And that was the first thing that really drew me in. And of course, I have the trilogy of books that I got for Christmas later that time, and I've been trying to do a reread every couple of years because it's certainly a fascinating story. Even though it's a fantasy, fiction-based story where there's grand battles and even hints of magic and there's good versus evil. I think it's just that it's a very fantastic level, but it doesn't take away from the human experience. We always hear in today's world where we need our reality and our fantasy. Like, no, that's not quite what we need. We need that human experience, that human level, that ability to connect. It doesn't have to be reality. It can be in a fantasy. And you can, if that is the basic way of storytelling, is to be able to write a story in scope and still be able to connect to the human level without it being reality. That's an art. And that's what Tolkien does. I mean, I know I've watched the movies and read the books later, but that's how he did it, and that he knew from experience. Especially, I read further about his life and everything else in between, him in the war and everything else. He wrote from that human level experience, but translated it in such a way that still meets us at our level without it being a reality. And that's what his work is about. I mean, being able to speak to us about heroism, about good versus evil. I mean, in today's world, we are fighting that as we speak in a way, but that doesn't have to be our reality either. Oh gosh, I I guess I have to speak it from maybe because I recently did a rewatch of the Peter Jackson trilogy. And maybe I can speak to it better from this perspective since I'm not at the best level of lore as others are. But I think my three favorite characters are Eowyn, Faramir, and Sam. Sam, for one, especially because here he is the epitome of a true best friend. Somebody who goes through hell and back, so to speak. And in a way, in his journey through with Frodo to Mordor, one of the things, and I come from a Catholic perspective with this, but one of the things that resonates with me is that there's a passage in the Bible, and I'm probably going to be butchering it because I don't memorize the Bible as much as others do. But yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I fear no evil. And that is basically who Sam is with Frodo. He goes through so much. And, I know the Hobbit says there and back again. It's more like to hell and back again. He goes through, he supports Frodo. He guides Frodo. He, is his moral guide when he's seeing his best friend go through almost like a drug addiction of the ring. And, that's somebody who we all need in our lives. That's who we can be to each other. It's being able to support one another and go through life as a journey there and back again. Of course, Eowyn and Faramir. I love Eowyn mainly because, people talk about, strong female women all day long, but here she is, a shield maiden of Rohan, basically, and trying to do right by defending her people, but she also fights. And she never loses her dignity. She never loses her femininity. She still cares for her people, and she bolsters the people around her. With Eowyn, she kind of reminds me of the story of St. George, where the maiden goes out to be sacrificed against the dragon. Well, she goes and fights the dragon anyway. So, talk about a role model of true femininity as well as being strong for her people. And I think we can learn a lot from her. And then you have Faramir, who on screen is doing the best way he could possibly do to lead his own people and still meet the demands and the responsibilities of his father. And while all three characters can be flawed in varying degrees, they, to me, they definitely epitomize the aspect of the human experience, in my opinion. We all talk about trying to be strong and trying to move forward in life and through journeys of situations, and all three deal with their own struggles and come out stronger in the end. And those are my three favorite characters. That's a loaded question. I would say maybe I'll come at it from this perspective. Maybe I have first impression bias. That's usually what I like to call it. But when I was first introduced to Tolkien, as far as an adaptation is concerned, the Peter Jackson trilogy, those are emotions and experiences that nobody else can take away that I experienced with Tolkien. In fact, one of my favorite scenes ever is when Rohan comes for Gondor's aid. And Theoden says, "Ride for ruin." And they yell out death. And it's just, that still brings me chills. I'm kind of like getting teary-eyed thinking about it, because it's amazing how here they go and they're going to meet their end, and they're going to do it anyway. They're going to face, that's what bravery is, facing evil head on, even with the fear. And they know it, but they embrace it and they continue forward. And then look what happens because of their energy, because of their strength and their bravery, their fortitude. It's a very powerful scene for me. I remember crying in the theater as a child. But see, it touched me because after the events of the early 2000s and everything else, it's like seeing humanity be good through that fantasy. And that's an emotion that nobody else can ever take away. And that's why, maybe it is a first impression bias with emotions and everything else, but there's nothing that nobody could ever take away that human experience that I felt as a child watching those films. I guess my first reaction is very much, and this is probably very uncharitable coming from a Catholic, but I feel a lot of pent-up rage because not only are they smearing him because of his faith, but they're dragging him through the mud. They're using his legacy to co-opt and take over his world, his story and using that as a platform for their own messaging. What a disgusting act. That is, it's just like dancing over the grave of somebody who's died. It's revolting. It's disgusting. I can't even go through all the adjectives that are in my head that I want to use at this moment. It's insulting. He is, I would say, I wouldn't say the founding father, but basically a founding father in such a way of creating such an epic world for modern myths. And they're spitting on his grave, and it's so disgusting to me how they're using it. And now we're seeing more and more information coming out and what they're saying about, what was it? The latest thing I heard from Bounding into Comics, one of the actresses of one of their new characters saying is that she's an activist character in the story. Nowhere in Tolkien's world has there been an activist. I really want to I have a couple of images in my mind of a crusade type of situation and how I want to react to it. But I am just going to, instead, I think I'm just going to laugh at them. I think Tolkien, in his wisdom, and probably he would say it better like this. He'd probably say, don't get angry, don't rage, just laugh at them. Because in reality, his books will never change. It's all in his story and everything that we've all grew up to love. His stories will not change, no matter what they try to do. And we can never, ever, ever let them go any further. So that's just my messaging. And the only way to be able to keep them from even co-opting or completely walking all over Tolkien's legacy is if we ignore them, because apathy and ignoring them at the same time is something in which they despise. They love the attention, and the more you give it to them, the more they become more powerful. So the best thing to do is completely ignore them. And oh, by the way, buy physical media. That's all.
As ever, this is Salty Texas Sea. I am Corey DB. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you've seen and heard, please hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you on board. That way you know, and we have things like live streams, which we are going to be doing every Tuesday evening. Take care. I hope you're having a great 2022.